The UK should have a new Prime Minister on the 5th of September. The Conservative Party's 1922 committee has confirmed its timetable to elect a new leader.
The 1922 executive met this afternoon, and I have since met with the board of the Conservative Party, and we have agreed the way forward for the leadership election. Nominations will open and close tomorrow. We'll have a first ballot on Wednesday, and a second ballot is likely on Thursday. We expect 20 supporters for each candidate, a proposer and a seconder who will be public, and 18 others. We'll also expect that on the first ballot, any candidate to proceed must have won at least 30 votes from parliamentary colleagues. Well, I think the result should be announced on the 5th of September, which will be when the House returns from the summer recess.
Well, that was Graham Brady talking yesterday, so when he was saying tomorrow, he means what is now today. The nomination process is underway here in London. Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, has just dropped out of the leadership race, saying that he will instead support the former Chancellor Rishi Sunak. Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab has also come out in support of Sunak, and Mr Sunak's been trying to win over Boris Johnson backers who feel he betrayed the current Prime Minister by resigning last week.
Boris Johnson is one of the most remarkable people I have ever met. And whatever some commentators may say, he has a good heart. Did I disagree with him? Frequently. Is he flawed? Yes. And so are the rest of us. Was it no longer working? Yes, and that's why I resigned.
Other candidates in the race include Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, the current Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi, former Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt, Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt and Tom Tugendhat, among others. Only 3 of the candidates have so far crossed the necessary threshold of 20 supporting MPs. That's Sunak, Mordaunt and Tugendhat, although Nadhim Zahawi claims to have the required support as well. One of the issues dominating the race so far has been tax cuts. Nearly all of the candidates are pledging to cut personal or business taxes or both. Meanwhile, the Labour Party is expected to table a no-confidence motion in the government in Parliament today. Labour leader Keir Starmer's been saying that he would push for a confidence vote if Boris Johnson didn't step down immediately. Well, let's go to our London correspondent Julia Chapman, who is joining me live now with the latest. Julia, explain how today works, and then when we get into that start of the voting process among Conservative MPs.
Well, today is the day that all of the nominations will be confirmed. They open and close nominations today, so all of those putting their hat in the ring will be confirmed by 6 p.m. local time here in London. But certainly we are already seeing the field narrowing. As you said, the number of 11 candidates has been whittled down to 10, with Transport Secretary Grant Shapps pulling out and putting his backing instead behind former Chancellor Rishi Sunak. So if those 10 manage to get the backing of at least 20 MPs, they will then go forward to the votes that begin tomorrow. There will be several rounds of voting, and that voting is held by fellow Conservative members of Parliament. And to get through after the first round, each candidate will require 30 votes, and that threshold will be raised as time goes on. So by late next week, the 21st of July, when Parliament begins its summer recess, the list of candidates will only be 2, and it is those 2 candidates who will spend the summer fighting it out for the top job, putting their positions forward to the Conservative Party membership, which numbers around 100,000 paying members. And the replacement for Prime Minister Boris Johnson is expected to be announced on the 5th of September. But until then, he will remain in power as a caretaker Prime Minister until his replacement has been confirmed.
Well, Julia, on that very note, the Labour Party, we expect that confidence vote that they've been pushing for because precisely of Boris Johnson remaining in Downing Street. Why is Labour doing that, and does it stand any chance of success?
Not everyone is happy with the decision by the Prime Minister to hold on to power, at least for now, despite having resigned last week. Some in his own party expressed some concern about that as well, but it is Labour that has been most vocal. The opposition leader, Sir Keir Starmer, is expected to put forward a motion of no confidence today in Parliament, and there could be a no confidence vote in Prime Minister Boris Johnson's leadership in Parliament tomorrow. It is widely expected, though, that would fail. In order for it to pass, he would need the support of a number of Conservative Party members, because, of course, the Conservative Party still has a majority in Parliament. So although Labour is pushing for Boris Johnson to go much earlier than the 5th of September, saying that it is time for him to leave now, it looks very unlikely that he is going to do so. There has been another reason suggested for this no confidence motion to be tabled. One source in the Labour Party has said that if this vote goes forward, it will mean that all of the candidates for the Conservative Party leadership will need to make their allegiances very clear as to whether they support Boris Johnson or not. And that would be put then, of course, to the wider Conservative Party membership, who would have a very clear understanding of where their candidates stand when it comes to Boris Johnson.
OK, Julia, thank you. That's Julia Chapman reporting live from London. And for more on this, we can talk to Maximilian Hess, who's a fellow at the Foreign Policy Research Institute from London. Maximilian, what's your sense about where we are with the Conservative leadership race at the moment? Any particular front runners from your perspective?
Well, thank you for having me. Rishi Sunak is certainly the favorite in the betting odds so far. Then you kind of have a battle going on in the right wing within the Tory party to see who their candidate will be. The sort of two main ones who've jostled themselves forward so far, Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, and Suella Braverman, the Attorney General. Then you also have Tom Tugendhat, who's at least crossed the initial threshold for 20 MPs, who's a backbencher who hasn't served in government and is positioning himself as the freshest face. You also have Sajid Javid, another critic of Boris Johnson, who did, however, serve in his government, but he seems to be sort of losing a bit of support. But there are still a number of other candidates in the race as well.
And Maximilian, talk to me about foreign policy, which is one of your areas of expertise. Are there ways in which we could see wildly different foreign policies coming from the Conservative Party and therefore the UK government, depending on who wins this race? Or do we think they're broadly these candidates on the same page when it comes to foreign policy matters like the relationship with the United States, the policy on Ukraine and that kind of thing?
Certainly. It's actually one of those cases where the further you get away from the UK, the more the policy will remain the same. So I don't expect there to be big changes in the UK's strategic approach to India or to some of the global Britain rhetoric that we've heard in recent years. Tom Tugendhat, who I mentioned, is one of the candidates who was a Remainer initially. So was Liz Truss. But both of them, at least in their campaign rhetoric and in Liz Truss's case in recent time in government, have adopted that narrative of Brexit wholeheartedly. There will, however, therefore be significant potential impacts on relations with the European Union. Boris Johnson was just trying to push through legislation to unilaterally override the Northern Ireland Protocol, part of the treaty agreed as part of the Brexit process. Whereas a candidate like Tom Tugendhat would be less keen to do that. Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak have both sort of indicated that they would go on that process. One area where things sort of remain to be seen is Ukraine and Russia and sanctions policy, where the rhetoric is very similar, and I don't expect we'll see a sort of directional change. But of course, the sort of competence and the ability to oversee those sanctions regimes, continue that support, and make it even more meaningful, being the leading security and political and economic crisis in Europe at the time, is a key question for all of these candidates.
OK, Maximilian, thank you. That's Maximilian Hess, fellow at the Foreign Policy Research Institute. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.